Welcome everybody. I see people. I'm looking at the chat here. I see Belgium, Germany. Wow, that's good. Awesome, guys. Echo. Peter, yeah. All right, Bulgaria. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so last week, if you remember, Mr. Brad Tallis showed us how to model a lower control arm. It's an automotive part. So this is a part that I've done in the past previously. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to show you guys the workflow. So let me switch over to my Fusion screen, and I've got nothing in here. And so here's the part that Brad designed, and he sent it over to me. So I'm bringing it into here. And we're just gonna go through step by step on how to machine this. And as a machinist, I'm gonna talk through, when I'm looking at a part, what I'm thinking of, things like that. And just going through step by step on what my thought process is on machining this part. So the very first thing that I want to do is just take a look and just get a feel for what I'm looking at and see how I'm going to process this part. So there's a few ways I can do it, and I think I'm just going to do this side first, and I'll machine all of these areas first, and then I'll flip it over and I'll grab in a vise, I'll grab on these faces and machine all of this in a secondary operation. So what I'm going to do first is come to the manufacturing workspace. And first thing I'm going to do is a setup. And when I click setup here, automatically Fusion will give me a preview of some stock, because if you look here, setup operation type is milling. We've got other options: milling, turning, cutting for water jet, laser, plasma, and additive. What we're doing today is milling. So my default setting is milling. We're also in inches today. Our units are in inches. Look for some live streams in the future on metric. We can do both, but this particular one is in inch. Okay, so we've got our milling selected. Fusion automatically determines our stock based on this WCS. So you can see Z is pointing up. And the way you control this is the orientation here. So when Brad drew it, he drew it in the proper orientation. But if it was not in the right orientation, one thing you can do is you can define what the Z is and what the X is. So for example, if I wanted this to be Z, when this is highlighted blue here, it's asking me for some feedback. So I can say that's my Z normal. And you can see how Z flipped up right there. Another way I could flip that, once I have that selected, I can click on this arrowhead, and that arrowhead flips the Z. I could also click on this arrowhead, and that flips the X. And I can also do the same for Y. Another thing you can do is, if you notice, as I'm hovering over this arrow, you can see the head is shaded. We can also click on the stem or the shaft, depending on what you want to call that. So if I click that, I can then define what my orientation is of that axis. So what I did there is I clicked the stem and clicked on this line. So again, if I highlight this edge, you can see the edge that's defining my Z. And I could do the same thing for X if I wanted to. But basically just wanted to show you guys different ways on how you can set up your WCS. That's your work coordinate system. And you need that on your machine. Switch over to this. And you'll need that on your machine, so when you set up your machine tool, you'll tell the machine where the part is on the machine table and what the orientation is in X, Y, and Z. So it's very important that we set it properly in Fusion. I'll switch back over here. Okay, so now we've gotten that, and so I've got my WCS selected, the orientation that I'm going to be machining this in, and then the next thing we want to do here is we've also got another option here. We can say, so Fusion defined this yellow preview area. That's called the stock, and that's the stock box. And then also we got an option of model box. And so the difference is Fusion projects. If I look at it from the top, and I say model box point, Fusion will project that rectangle around the part based on the X and Y, or the orientation that I have selected. We can also do by the stock. And you're going to ask, well, what's the difference? So here, when I come to this tab here, right now, if I look under mode, let me drag this wider. So we have a relative size box, and it's adding stock to the sides and top and bottom. So if I come here and I say, give me 1/2 inch of stock on the sides, you can see what Fusion did. It gave us 1/2 inch of material all around. So as I rotate around here and I look at the front view, we've got 40 thousandths. That's 1 millimeter. So what if I change that to 1/2 inch? You can see now it gave me more material. And that WCS follows that because we selected stock box. So I'm going to keep this down to here. I'll put 100 thousandths there, and I'll put 0.1 over here. And on the bottom, I want to grab onto something in the vise. So I'm going to give it, what if I give it 1/4 inch of material? So then I can grab with my vise on this bottom edge here. Okay, so we also have this rounding here that you can give it a number, and Fusion will automatically round up. So this is inches, so we can round up to the nearest 1/4 inch. So I could take this number of the dimensions and say, all right, I need to go out to the machine shop floor, find some stock that's 8 1/4 inches by 2.5 inches by 1.5. So that's very handy for the machinist and for the setup guy, and also when you purchase material, you get that right there. So it's super handy. I'm going to hop back over to the Setup tab. And remember, I was talking about the stock box point. And again, if I click that stock box point, you see what Fusion does. It projects these dots. So I've got this over here. I can say that's my origin. It's basically when you pick up the offset on your part, where are you determining? So we were on the center of the part, but I can say I want this corner to be my 0, or this corner to be my 0. So that way, when Fusion gives us the G code, all the coordinates would come from that point. Another thing I want to so let's come back over here. We'll pick, let's go with the center here. Model body, what is that? That tells Fusion, what are we machining? What's the model that we're cutting? So we've defined the stock and we've defined the model. So now Fusion has what it needs to machine the part. So I've talked about these first two tabs, and this third tab here is post-process. Post-process is where you tell it what the program number. I can say program 1, 2, 3, 4, and program comment I can say control arm op 1. So control arm operation 1. And then here machine WCS, that's machine work coordinate system. And again, this is more on the machine side, where when you set up your machine, when you set up the machine, that you define, is it G54 or G55 or G56? And if you have multiple vices on your machine, you can say vice number 1 is G54, vice number 2 is G55, and so on. So to define that, so in Fusion, if you have a value of 0, that will give you G54. If you have a value of 1, that will also give you G54. Number 2 is G55. Number 3 is G56, and so on. So I'm going to leave this at number 1. And if you have multiple stations and you want to post out and you want to make this part on 3 vices, then you would click this and add that. But I'm not going to worry about that for today. So I've got everything I need of these 3 tabs, and I'm just going to hit OK. So now I've got my setup here, setup 1, and I'm ready to start assigning some toolpath. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat just to see if there's anything, any questions or anything out there that anybody has. All right, looks like you guys are good over there. All right. So very first thing I want to do, I want to rough out all that material. So we've got a few toolpath strategies here. And if you look at this new UI that just came out, the new user interface, we broke it down by tabs. So when you're in the manufacturing workspace, we've got milling, we've got turning, we've got additive, probing. So we're going to focus today on milling. So now when I'm in the milling, I've got all these 2D toolpath strategies, adaptive clearing, pocket, face, contour, and so on. And we've got these 3D toolpaths. And the 3D toolpaths are model aware and stock aware. So I like using adaptive clearing. And if I hover my mouse, it gives you like a preview of what the toolpath does with a small description. So adaptive clearing will literally take all the material and remove the material and leave some stock on the part if I desire. So I'm going to do this one here, adaptive clearing. And we get this box here on the right-hand side. So in Fusion, all of our toolpaths are the same as far as the user interface. So the first tab is the Tool tab. And the Tool tab, we select our tool, if we're using coolant or not, or air blast, the RPM, the surface speed, all the feed rates. And then on the second tab is the geometry, where we define what we are cutting, any rest machining, things like that, tool orientation, I'll cover that. Heights tab, the third tab here is heights, where you control the elevation, where the tool is where the tool goes in the z-axis when it's positioning, where it rapids down to, where it begins feeding, where it machines down to. So that's all handled here under the heights tab. Then we've got the passes tab. The passes tab controls everything that's in the cut. So we've got a tolerance here, optimal load, that's how much you're taking on the side of the end mill, what the tool engagement is radially. We've got axially, this is how deep it's going in the z-axis, climb cutting, if you're avoid cavities or not, order by area, stock to leave, all that type of stuff is here under passes. And then finally the linking tab. Linking is everything that the toolpath is doing, entering the cut and exiting the cut. So when it's not in the cut, but when it's positioning before and after the cut. So we'll cover all of these, but I just want to give you a quick walkthrough. These are all the same. So tool, what tool am I going to use? I'm going to select that, and I've got a tool library that I already machined this part previously at a trade show, and when I click that here, it populates with all the tools that I used. So I'm going to use this tool number 18, and when I click that, Fusion gives me a preview here of the tool. So there's my tool holder, the end mill, I can see the flute length. It gives me some information here on the side. I can also right click and edit, but I'm not going to worry about that at this moment. But I do want to use this tool to rough that part. So I'll OK that. And now Fusion brings it in the orientation with Z. And then if I go over to the geometry tab, you'll notice that yellow rectangle. And that yellow rectangle, Fusion already knows, because we defined it, if you remember, in this setup, we defined the size of that stock. So Fusion already knows the size of the stock. So I'm not going to worry about doing any selections, really. I'm going to leave it all default. And here under rest machining, it's saying machine basically from the setup stock. So again, that's the stock that we defined in our setup. Next tab is the heights tab, where I talked about earlier about the elevation or how deep the tool is going. So if we come here to the front, we can see this dark blue line. I generally start from the bottom. Where is my tool going to? And you look here, we've got a from. So we've got all these choices, and we are already selected. Go to the model bottom, but I want to go beyond the model bottom. And I'll say minus 30 thousandths. Now you'll see that blue line will go below the model bottom. That's a representation of how deep the tool will go. So if I hit 0.1, there we go. So our tool will come down to 100 thousandths below the model bottom. And then, as I said, I start going from the bottom. And then here, where do you want to start feeding that tool? So we want to start feeding from the stock top. And then we've got a retract height and then a clearance height. So we want to start feeding and cutting from the stock top. So I'm going to leave these at default. Next, I'm going to come over to the passes tab. And I'm going to look at a few things here. Optimal load. Optimal load is how much the tool will take on the side of the tool as it steps into the part. And we can right click. We've got some, we got these things here we can click. And if I go to edit expression, I can edit. It's a formula. So what's default now is set is whatever the tool diameter times 0.4. That means 40% of the tool diameter it will step in. So I'm going to change that to 0.2, 20% of my tool diameter. I'll hit OK. And now you'll see that number changed from 0.3 to 0.15. And now after I set my preference, I can now right-click this and make that default. Another thing I want to look at is stock to leave. How much stock am I leaving on the part with this tool so I can come back with another tool and finish it. So I have set here in my default 20 thousandths radially and 20 thousandths axially. So that's 20 thousandths in XY and 20 thousandths in Z. I'll come over here to the linking tab. And most of the time I leave the defaults. A couple things I look at is what's my ramping angle, ramp taper angle. I have mine set at 3. Ramp clearance height, that is where it's going to start helixing in. It's going to be 100 thousandths from the top of the part, or the top of where I defined. So I'm going to change that so it's a little bit closer, 50 thousandths. And I'm going to leave all of this how it is. I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice Fusion will calculate a toolpath now. And it did a good job. It found all of my stock, and it went down. It obeyed all the settings I gave it. And so it machined all the outside and even entered the holes there. But it didn't enter into this pocket because the tool is too big to enter. We're going to machine that with a smaller tool. So now that I've got a toolpath, I could right-click this and simulate. And I can see what I have. And a few things here, we've got this box, and I can simulate the holder, the shaft or the shank of the tool, or just the flute. I'll do the holder itself, and it'll show the end mill as well. And then here under stock, I leave that at standard. And colorization, I like using comparison. In comparison, you'll see it when I hit play down here. It will show how much stock is left, and then a green area will take it to the finished size of the model. You can also turn on transparent, which will be a transparent of the stock, so you can still see the model. You can tell it to stop on collision. I'll make this a little bit wider so you can see. Stop on collision, and you can give it a tolerance. I'm just going to leave it how it is and hit play. So down here, this will go to the beginning of the toolpath, go to previous operation. We only have one. And so we can, if you click that, it'll take you, if you depend on where you're selected, it'll take you to the beginning. I'm just going to hit play, and you'll see now Fusion will start machining that. And now this white dot here, this will slow it down. And if I move this to the right, it will speed it up. And you'll notice there's a little white tick here in the middle. If I go beyond that to the left of that, Fusion will go in reverse. So pay attention to that it's going in the right direction. You can go forward here, and we can see it here. And you'll notice this black bar as it's moving. Another thing I could do, if I hit pause here, I can click anywhere in my desktop area, in the white area, with the left click of the mouse, and I could scrub basically the toolpath. And that would be the same as if I clicked, whoops, I went too far down. If I clicked on this area here and I scrub this way. So you've got a couple of ways to do that. I'm just going to hit play and let that finish. I'll turn transparency off so we can just see the stock. And there we go. So we've got our toolpath. Another thing I like to set is here on mode. I turn my mode to tail. So imagine if you had a piece of string tied to that. And again, if we start at the beginning, you'll just see just a little bit what the tool has cut without showing all of that yellow, and sometimes it gets a little crowded in there and noisy to look at. We also have, if you're over here, if you have showing all toolpaths, we also have some tools down here that you can hide the links. And but when I did that, you'll notice it exited the simulation. So don't do that during simulation. So let's go back here. And what we're going to do, we're going to continue on. So I already have an idea of what we machined. And then I'm looking again here at the part and determining what I'm going to do next. And, you know, there's many ways to approach this. And I'm going to want to machine around the outside of this part. So I'm going to need a contour to select to chain around the outside. And I'm looking here, and I don't really have anything to pick. So I've got this edge, I've got that edge, and I have that circle, but there's a gap. So there's no line for me to select here. There's nothing down here. I do have these lines here I can chain, but again, over here, I don't have anything to select. And I'm going to rotate over to this side. And again, I don't see anything I could select. I could go to the 3D contour, but I'm going to stick with 2D contour, and I need a chain to select. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my design workspace, and I'm going to create a sketch on a plane. But before that, I don't want my sketch to be on a face. So I'm going to do an offset plane off of that face. And I'm going to drag that up. And I'm going to say, let's make it 1 inch above. And the reason why I do that is just so it's off the part, so it's not right on top of the part. Because I just want to be able to select a contour. So I offset that plane. You can see that now down in my timeline. And now on this plane, I'm going to create a sketch. And now what I want to do, I want to project the edges of this part. So here under Create, we have Project Include. So here we have Project for letter P is a shortcut. So you can hit the letter P on your keyboard or come here and click that. And then we've got this Project menu that comes up. And under Selection Filter, you can select entities or bodies. And what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to select the body, and Fusion will pick the silhouette of the part. And so you'll notice as soon as I click that, we've got that purple line of the silhouette of the part. But what that did, that gave me this over here. So, but I want to get these edges here, right? So what if I come here now to entities? I lost that. So what I need to do, I need to pick this body, and I'll hit OK. And then now I've got this. So now I need to come here and edit. Actually, I didn't even exit the sketch. So I'm going to hit Project again, and I'm going to come here to Specific Entities. And let's see. So now I want this edge, and you can see it's projecting up to the top. So I'm going to zoom in here just so I can pick these edges. So I want this edge, this edge, this edge here. Make sure to grab that edge. And now you can see it gave me what I wanted. So now I'll hit OK. And what I'll do, I'll get rid of what I don't need. So I'll get rid of these lines just to make my life easier, do some housekeeping. Okay, and I could even get rid of these center circles just so I don't have them in there. So I'll delete that. So now I've got this outer contour, and you can see it's closed because this area is shaded. So now when I'm in the machining workspace, I can click on this geometry to define my contour. So I'll finish that sketch. I'll come back over to the manufacturing workspace, and you can see here we've got this notification, toolpath is out of date, because I changed something in the sketch or the model. And I can just come in here, right click, regenerate, and Fusion regenerates that toolpath. I'll take a quick look at the chat, see if there's anything in there that I need to address. Looks good. I don't see anything in there popping out or jumping out at me. Brad's doing a good job. Thank you, Brad. Okay, so now what I want to do, now I want to do a 2D contour. And I'll do a 2D contour so Fusion remembers the last tool that I used, so that's tool number 18. And here under geometry, what am I cutting? So I can click on this edge now. And we've got this red arrow here. So if we look at it from the top, what this tells us is the direction the cutter will go and the side of the contour that we selected. And the distance from here to there is the radius of the tool. So if we had a larger tool, that red arrow would be out here. So this red arrow gives us 3 bits of information. Again, the direction, the side of the part it's cutting on, and the radius. So visually you can tell, is it right or wrong? very helpful to have that there. So now we've got the contour selected, and I got to come here now to the heights to tell it how deep is the tool going. And by default, it said go to the selected contour, which was way up there, but we don't want to go to the selected contour. We want to go to a selection. And I'm going to select this bottom face. I could also just click on that edge there, or that entity, and you can see here my bottom face is selected. I don't want to offset anything. I'm okay with it going right to that face. And now we'll come over here to passes. If we wanted to do any multiple depths or multiple passes, we can do a few things here, and I will just leave it at default. I'm not going to even change anything here on the linking tab. So all I did was verify my tool, select that geometry, come to the heights, select the depth of my tool, which is that face, and hit OK. And now we've got a tool path. And now I could hide this sketch because I don't want to have that sketch there anymore. So I'll come in here and I'll simply turn that sketch off, do some housekeeping. So now you can see we've got a tool path, and now if I come to my setup and I right click, now I could simulate, and I'll play that again and I'll speed this up a bit, and we can see what our tool path looks like. And you can see here that we missed an area here. That tool radius is too big to get into that corner there. So there's some blue there and in here. So I already see that I'm going to need to make a change. So let me close this, and in my tool path here I can right click and edit, and instead of using that 3/4 tool, let me go to this tool library that I have here, and I'm going to pick, I have a 1/2 inch diameter tool, which is a little bit smaller, and I'll hit OK, and it's going to remember all the other settings. Now we'll OK that, and if you remember, it didn't clean all the way out here. So let me come out here. A couple of ways we can handle that. We could actually, let me just leave that and simulate now, just so you get a visual. Whoop, let me regenerate. Yes, I'll just regenerate everything. And then when that's done, I'll simulate. And let me simulate this guy here. Play that. And now you'll see that that tool, the secondary tool, should now clean up that edge nicely. And this is just like a graphical representation, but we don't have any blue, except we do have some blue down here. And so how do we do that? We can do that a couple of ways. I'm going to just, let's see here. Let me just duplicate that. And now what I'm going to do, using those same settings, instead of that whole chain, I'll simply come to here and select that. And on the passes, I can tell it, give me a few passes. Something like this, 2 passes at 0.400. And look at this, what that will do. So now that will give me 2 passes out here. We can play with stock contours and have it extend past that. But I don't want to run out of time. I need to get going on some of these other tool paths. But so that looks pretty good there. And then now here, let's go to now. Remember how we had this pocket was there? We still need to finish these circles. So I'm going to come in here, do another 2D contour, and I'm going to machine this circle here, and I'm going to select that bottom edge there. And now I need to come into the heights, and you can see here our bottom height, again, defaulted to the selected contour. So I'm going to say minus 0.030. So the tool comes past that. I can even give that a little bit more. And I'm not going to hit anything else. I'm just going to hit OK. And you can see Fusion gives us a toolpath to now finish those two inner circles. Next thing we need to do is come into here and machine this pocket. So to do that, I'm going to do a 2D pocket. I'm going to select a tool, and I'm going to need to use a tool that's smaller. And that tool is going to be this 1/4 inch diameter tool. There's my preview. And for the geometry, what am I going to machine? I'm simply going to click on this face. And Fusion gives me that blue preview. And that preview is what Fusion sees that it needs to remove. I'm going to come over, so I don't need to select anything on the heights because it already knows the selected contour, which is a floor that I clicked. Under passes, by default, Fusion will say stock to leave. I'm going to turn that off because I do want Fusion to finish it. But I'm going to tell it give me 2 passes at 0.005. And on the multiple depths, I can turn that on. And I can say, give me a maximum step down of 0.1 and 1 finish pass at 10 thousandths, 0.01. And finish only at the final depth. You can use even step downs, order by depth. I'm not going to get into too much detail on what all of these do, but I'm going to hit OK. And then now Fusion will machine out that pocket, and it will also finish once it's done roughing everything. It will now finish as well. So now if we come into here and we can go to simulate, and again, we don't want to run through all of this. So if I click here, Fusion will fast forward internally and take us to there. And I can already see that I missed this area here on that top face. So if I play that, Fusion will go ahead and machine all of that. And this is why I use this green, the comparison, so I can see the green. So I do need to machine this top area and that one step that was there. So let me close that, and here's the beauty of Fusion. I can go anywhere in time and just machine an area and drag it up. So if I come into here and I'm gonna do a 2D, let me just show you this. We've got this horizontal, and this horizontal is super easy. I can just say horizontal with what tool. I can say I'm gonna use this tool number 13, and I'll hit OK there. And geometry, I'm gonna do a silhouette of the part. And actually, let me do this. What if if I don't select anything here, what will happen if I tell it I want to go to this face and make sure stock to leave is not on? What happens if I go with just these settings? Will Fusion give me something? Yes, it will. So I didn't even have to select anything on the geometry tab. Fusion is intelligent enough to determine all of that and find it. So now what I can do, because I don't want to do tool 18, 13, 13, and then 14, then 13 again, I can now simply drag this up anywhere in time. And I want to put that right there before the pocket. So right in there. So I'll do all of that contouring, and then here, and then I've got this pocket. So now I know that I've got everything done, and I will simulate now, and I can come down to this pocket, and now you can see that all that top surfaces are already done. And now if I go here to tail, cleans it up, and you can see that we've got that blue area we need to machine. We've got these little areas here. That's because the tool has a corner radius, and I am actually okay with that, but it doesn't extend past it. I'm going to show you how to fix that. But let's machine this pocket now. And while that's going, I'll take a look at the chat. And looks like everything's good. Brad's got a good, I see some thumbs up. We've got 87 people watching. Cool, that's awesome. So now we've got everything done in there. It looks good again. I'm okay with the little fillet in that corner because my tool has a corner radius, and that's why that blue area is showing there, and I'm okay with that. All right, so this side is pretty close to being done, but we've got this little area where we've got the little cusp there. So how could I fix that? I will simply, the feature that generated that was tool 13. So the way I'm going to do that, I'll just do a 2D contour. I'm going to select Tool 13, hit OK, and under Geometry, I just want to click on this contour here. And so now what Fusion will do a nice cut there. We don't have to worry about doing that on the other side because the horizontal toolpath got that already. And now I'm just going to hit OK. And so now Fusion will go all the way to that edge and then come off tangent. We can do some other things here. We can come to the geometry and say, give it a tangential extension distance of, say, 0.1. And then if we hit OK, look what Fusion does now. It goes an additional tangent past that, so it'll clean that up nicely. So again, let me drag this up here. So it'll do the horizontal. Then it'll come past that. It'll clean it up nicely. I'm not going to worry about simulating that right now. And what we do need to do, we need to drill this hole, and then we need to deburr the top edges of this part. So let's come into here, and I'm going to go to Drill. We're going to select a tool, and I know that I have that drill is right here. It's this 323 diameter drill, and I'll hit OK. Under Geometry, right here it says Hole Faces, so we can select faces, selected points, or diameter range. I'm going to keep it at selected face. Now, what is the whole face I want to drill? I want to drill that whole face. And if I look here at the front view, you can see Fusion gives you a preview. Let me zoom in a bit. So that's the drill point. And let me come here to the Heights tab. How do we control that to go all the way through? So you can see here, Fusion is intelligent enough to say, machine to the whole bottom and start at the whole top. But what if I want that drill to go through? And we'll go here, check that, and look, I see that drill is too big compared to the model. Actually, it's not. Those vertical lines that we saw there are these edges, but the hole is good there. So don't get confused when you're looking that those lines are the hole, because that's simply that front face there. So that looks good. Let's go back to this front view. And now when I check drill tip through the bottom, Fusion will take the drill tip past the bottom, and I can give it an additional distance to go past. So the drill will come through that. And then over here under cycle, you can define, do you want to go drill straight through? This would give us a G81. If you're familiar with G-code, I don't want to get too nerdy on G-code, but this would output a G81. This would output a G82. Chip breaking would be a G73. So it's a chip breaking cycle where the drill would back up slightly. And but that hole's not really deep, so we can just leave it at drill in, wrap it out. I'll hit OK. So now we've got that hole. So if we recap, we roughed it, we machined around the outside, we finished this hole, we finished that, we did finish this, we finished all these surfaces. This is all done, the hole is done. Now we need to deburr these edges because they're sharp. So how do we do that in Fusion? We can come here to 2D chamfer. I see. Hey Ron, G-code is Greek to you. It used to be Greek to me, but I learned it and I find it very helpful. When you're at the machine, let me switch. I find it helpful when you're at the machine and you're watching the code or watching your tool cut. You can see on your screen as the code is approaching, you can visually look and see and interpret what it's going to do next. So me personally, I find it very helpful to understand what the codes mean, but it's not mandatory if you're using a tool like Fusion. Because you can see the simulation on your computer in Fusion before you send it to your machine. So not necessary that you know it, but I find it quite helpful to at least have an understanding of it. All right, so let's carry on here. Peter, yeah, too nerdy. I know my audience. Yeah, we're nerds and we're proud of it. Yeah, I do nerd out on machining, G-code, all of that good stuff. Find it a lot of fun and fascinating that we could design something in Fusion and make a tangible product that we can hold in our hand or even sell or market. So it's quite a cool industry we're in, and I'm happy you guys are here sharing it with us. All right, so we were talking about chamfering, 2D chamfer. So if you hover over any of these, we've got a tooltip that comes up, and again, it describes what this does. So we want to deburr or break those sharp edges. So first thing I need to do is select my tool. I should have that tool here, and yes, I have a chamfer tool. There's a preview. I'm going to hit OK. And the next thing I need to do is tell Fusion what edges am I going to deburr. So I'll simply just start clicking edges. Here, 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 and there, and there. I also, as I'm doing that, I want to verify that the red arrow is on the right side, so that on this edge, that red arrow is there. On this edge, the red arrow, the tool will cut on the outside. Fusion does a great job of determining what side the tool needs to be because of the model, but sometimes you might have to go in and click one of these and flip it around. Just be aware of that. And then over here on the heights, I don't need to do anything on the heights because it's going to the selected contour of all the edges that I selected. Passes, this is where I want to focus on. Under chamfer, so you can see that tooltip, we want to select the sharp corners. If we have a chamfered edge, I would use another tool. If the model was chamfered, if it was a model chamfer, I would not use this strategy. I would probably use the 2D contour, and there's a chamfering strategy in there. But this one I find super useful, super easy. I just need to tell it here what the width is. So if I hover, what is the width of my chamfer? And I just want to do a nice corner break of 0.02 inches. And then chamfer tip offset. What is that? I'm going to leave it at the default, and we'll see what outcome we get. And then chamfer clearance, what is that? So if I hover over, so you see that vertical, the shaft or the shank of the end mill, if it's going to hit a wall of the model, that chamfer clearance says stay away by that amount. So I'm going to leave it at the default there, and I'm simply going to hit OK and see what we get. And if you look, we've got a blue line everywhere with some green entries. And if I look, that is from the linking, and it's saying perpendicular. I can uncheck that, give it a radius, something small. I'm not going to worry about the vertical lead-in radius. Again, like I said, guys and gals, if you hover over anywhere in Fusion, it gives you a tooltip and it tells you what it is. So I don't really care for that at this moment in time. I'm going to zero that out. And let's see what happens when I hit OK. Now you can see we get a nice entry arc. The tool will come around and then exit with the nice arc. And remember down here earlier, I turned off the links. So that's why those yellow rapid moves were hidden. But if I'm looking at this, that looks pretty good. And I also want to pay attention that when it's doing these steps here, that the tip of the tool doesn't violate my model. And I can see that the tip of the tool is going to there. So now, this part looks good. Let's go ahead and simulate that. And I see we're coming up on time. We've got 14 minutes. I'm going to speed up a little bit here, but let's simulate and see where we're at. So I'm going to play. I'm going to speed this up a bit. As that's going, I'm going to look at the chat. Thanks for the thumbs up, everybody. Ron, Peter, I see those right there. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this. And I see something that needs attention. If I zoom in here, I got that little cusp. And that's because I've got a corner radius of my end mill. So how do I fix that? So let me hide the model, and now we can just see the stock. And you can see that there is a chamfer. This is just graphical representation. When you're at the machine, it'll be nice and smooth, and it'll look really nice. But this area here, I see a little cusp there. You can see that ridge, and that's from my tool that did that. If I come to this tool here, you see this radius here? If I look at it from the front, there's a radius there. And then so that flat And then this little cusp there on the radius, that's what's creating that little lip there. So when I did that step over here, I need to make that smaller. So the toolpath that did that is gonna be this one here. And remember, I turned off my model. Let's turn that back on. So I'll come into here, and if I edit, here under passes, my step over is 0.4. I can right click, edit the expression, and I can get rid of that. And I can do something like tool underscore diameter. And as I start typing, Fusion will filter out and give me that. So I'll click on that. And now I can say something like tool diameter times 0.5. So 50% of my tool diameter will be the step over. I'll hit OK, and now you can see this changed. So I can even come in here and say make default. So regardless of what tool diameter I have, that would automatically update to 50% of the tool diameter. So now I'll hit OK. And I'm afraid it won't get that edge. We've got another thing here. I could do this. And I'll just give it a third pass. And now let's see what that does. I like that. That looks good. We've got stock contours I talked about in a previous live stream. I'm not going to worry about that right now because we are running out of time. We still got to machine this other side of the part. All right, so now I'm going to save my part before something, God forbid something happens and I have a crash or power outage. So I'm going to say in my notes, say added op1 toolpaths and enter that. And now when I go to my data panel, I look at my version history. So here it is, right here, added op1 toolpaths. So now we're good. I'm happy with that side of the part. But one thing I need to think of is when I flip it over, what's my stock gonna look like? And if you remember, if we simulate and I'm gonna scrub through that really fast, our stock now looks like that blue area. How are we gonna handle that when we flip it over? Well, after we simulate, guys, and we're in this screen, we could right click and say stock and say save stock. And then here you can tell it where do you want it to go. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. I will save that, and the name is stock.stl. So now that's saved on my desktop. So I'll close simulation. And one thing I want to do before I go on to machine this next side, I do want to come into here under design, and I want to bring that into my Fusion file here. So I will come here to insert mesh. You see here, it inserts an OBJ or STL. So we just saved that STL. So I'll insert that. And where is it? There it is. I'm looking at my desktop. There's my stock. There's a preview of it. And I'll hit open. Now it brings it in. And if you notice, it's a lot bigger than my part. And if it's an inch or metric, look at that, it changes. So I'm gonna leave that. See as I move that around, you can kind of see that my part is hiding behind that. So I'm gonna hit OK, and now I can come into here under bodies, and if I hide that mesh, you see it's right there, just sitting on top of my part. And if I simply just show the mesh, there's my mesh. So that mesh body is what I'm going to use as my stock when I do the second side. Okay, so now I'm going to come back here to the manufacturing side. And my setup 1 is selected. And because something has changed, I need to right click and regenerate that. Excuse me. Have a sip of water here. Okay. So now what we need to do is create a setup for the second side. So because that setup is selected, we're seeing the preview for setup 1. I'm going to unselect that. I'm just clicking here in space. So I'm going to come here to setup. And right away, if you remember, like we did on the first setup, Fusion will automatically start populating things for us. But what I want to do, I'm going to hide that body. I'm going to show the part, hide that mesh body. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to come to my stock. And if you remember before, we did a relative size box. I'm going to say from solid. And now nothing is selected. I'm going to come here and click that mesh body in my browser. So now Fusion sees that mesh as the stock. And that's what we're going to be machining. We'll be removing that material. You can even see that drill point is in there. All right, so we'll come back here to this setup, and I'm going to just verify where my origin is going to be. And we can do a few things. We can just leave it down there and flip the orientation so that Z is there. Depending on how your setup is, where you cut your soft jaws, where your origin is, you can determine where you want this. And for this case, I'm going to leave it here off of the bottom machined surface. And you, as a machinist, you have a choice. So look here, Fusion thinks that the mesh is a model. I want to deselect that, and that's the body that I'm machining now. So we defined in the stock that mesh body for the stock, and then this is the model body that we're machining. So now I have what I need. I'm going to come into here under post-process. I can say that program number will be 2, and my program comment will be op2. And here, if you remember, we had 1 selected for the first side. I'm going to change that to number 2, which is G55. I'll hit OK. So now I have everything that I need to begin machining this secondary side. And I'm going to take everything that I did here. So I can right click, I could copy that, I could click here and paste. And now you can see that tool is in there, but now let me regenerate. It's going to use all of the same settings from before. But I don't need to go to the model bottom because all that's done, right? So what I need to come into here, I simply need to come into my heights and not go to the model bottom. I can say go to a selection, and I can say go to this face and go down. Let's see, if we look at this view, if my tool goes beyond that edge, because if you remember, all these faces are already done. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to verify that 20,000 stock is being left. And now Fusion will take and remove all of that. And I'm looking around here. You see how it's entering the holes? I could come into here, I can edit that, I can uncheck machine cavities. And now we can look into there and see what it does. Now it's going to avoid dropping into those cavities. We can also control that with the linking on the helical entry, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm trying to speed through this. We've only got a few more minutes. All right, so now we've got that all roughed out. Remember how we used that horizontal toolpath on the other side? I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste here. And now what I need to do is just go to my heights, and my selection will be, I want to go to this face, find all the horizontal surfaces going to that depth, and I'll hit OK. And now Fusion will find everything and machine all those faces for me. Next, remember that pocket we did on the other side, which was this pocket? I'm simply going to right click, copy, paste it into here. And for my contour or geometry, do you remember we picked that side? I'm going to deselect this, and I'm going to pick this and that. And verify on the heights, it's going to come from the model top, and I'll hit OK and see what we get. So we got some air cutting here. So I'm gonna do something here, and I'm gonna edit this. And remember, on this geometry, I'm simply gonna select these two outer ones, and on the height, I'm gonna say machine from the top selection here, and still go down to the model bottom. So now that will hit those two outer pockets. Now I will duplicate that and simply edit this here. And on the height, instead of starting from that blue, I'm gonna start roughing from here, that face, okay that. So now those pockets are done, and these holes are already done from the other side. So we're almost there, guys. So now I'm gonna deburr. But as I'm clicking deburr, I remember I need to hit this face. How do I do that? So in Fusion, I could do a couple of things. So I can say, what if I wanted to face or give it a horizontal toolpath? Let's say horizontal. And I come here to geometry. I've got this tool orientation here. And what is my Z normal? So see, this is highlighted in blue. I can say my Z normal is this. And look, if we look at it from the side, my Z normal is that face. And then on the heights tab, I can say machine down to a selection. And what will happen if I just hit OK now? Fusion automatically found those flat faces normal to that Z that I selected. So now what we need to do, let me do a quick simulation, see where we're at. Running out of time, but I wanted to machine all of this and get you guys there. And we've got some material here we still need to remove, so that's easy. And all of these are pretty good here. We got some corners in there we got to address. So let's close this here. I think that fillet isn't perfectly round. But let's go, and we're going to finish this side here. So what I can do here is under this operation, I'm going to do a 2D contour, and I want to control what I'm cutting. So I can even just select this edge right there. I could go like this, and then under selection, and under the heights, I can give it a selection. I want to go to this depth, and I can stay above that because I don't really necessarily need to hit that, but let's just leave it there because I want it to be the same depth as that horizontal cut did. And we can control a tangential entry. Watch this. So we can give it like a ½ an inch so that it'll go past that, or we can even tell it something like 1 inch. And let's see what that gives us on the 2D contour, and verify our tool is going to be the same as the tool that did that horizontal. Okay, that, and there we go. So let me drag this up right after the horizontal. So we've got the horizontal did all of that. You can see this came to here, but didn't machine these faces. And then this contour will walk around that. And then now let me do some deburring. So I'll simply right click that. I don't even need to copy that. Fusion is easy enough. I can go a 2D chamfer, start selecting my edges. I can say this edge, this edge, that edge here, this edge there. Actually, I don't want to select. I want that to be open, and I want this to go to here, and accept that. And then I want to hit this edge. I want to hit that edge, this edge here, and that edge there. And I'm looking, did I get everything? I'm going to come back to these because those will require some separate attention. And you can see now it's deburring all those edges. I could hit that one in there. Let's edit. So under geometry, I can add that edge, and I can add this edge here. I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard so I just get a single selection And that's going to be an open contour to there. I'll accept that. So that will hit that edge. We'll hit OK. So all those edges are done. Now I need to simply hit these edges, and I'll just do a 2D chamfer. Come over here. Almost there, guys. Tool orientation, that's my Z normal. And as far as edges, I just want to do this edge, and I accidentally clicked that face. Whoops, I'm not on geometry. Let me unselect that, and that's my Z normal. I forgot to go to the geometry contour selection, and I'm gonna hold Option on my Mac. It's Alt on a PC, and I'm gonna click on these edges that I want, and I'm gonna hit OK. You see how those didn't get quite, so let me go back. Let's hit this edge and that edge on the outside, and then I can come here. I can go to there, and I'll hit this edge. Oops, I forgot to, let me delete that current. So I'll click on that again. It automatically knows it's open. I want to come to here, and I'll accept that. Now that turns dark blue. Again, I want to hold Alt or Option on the Mac. Click that edge, click it again, and come out to here. I'll hit plus. Now those look good. I'll hit OK. And now Fusion will deburr those edges. And I want to verify there's no collisions. Looks like we have a little bit of a violation there, but let's come into here and simulate Op2. And we're going to play that. Sorry, we're over time, guys. Almost there. And we are good. And if you remember, we had that little fillet there. That's from the tool. And if we hide the model body, so those red areas are where the tool violates the model, but that's what we want because we do want a chamfered edge. So that's all I have today. Hope that gives you some, let me switch over here. Sorry we went a little bit over time. We covered quite a bit. I described a lot of the settings and showed you guys how to do this. Hope you guys got something out of it, and we're happy that you guys take some time out of your day or evening to be with us, and we love doing this, and we're happy that you guys are here. So I'll take a quick look at the chat, see if there's anybody on there. Ekram, thank you. Peter, Eyal, everybody, Barry, everybody on there. I wasn't able to monitor the chat, but we appreciate you guys being here. So with that, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time.